Reading fantasy and science fiction is fundamental, bringing so many benefits to my life. Yours too, I bet. How many of the following books that I'm going to share here today have you read? Welcome to Fantasy for the Ages, the show where a father and son talk about fantasy, science fiction, horror, and other nerdy things we enjoy. I'm Jim, the father of this, and I'm here to talk about good books today. I hope you're going to enjoy this episode. If you do, give it a like and subscribe to our channel if you haven't done so yet. So, here's 26 fantastic reads from fantasy and science fiction for you today, an alphabetical list of some amazing things I've enjoyed. So, one book for each letter of the alphabet. Just a fun way to deliver some great fiction to you to consider. But also, I'm sharing 26 more. A book for each letter of the alphabet that still waits on my TBR. Again, incredible books from everything I know about them. That's why they're on my TBR, and maybe they should be on yours. If you have read some of these already, put your thoughts on them in the comment box. If you agree with me, these are great, let me know. If you think anything I have on the TBR shouldn't be, I'll take that comment too. Thanks for sharing your thoughts. So, ABCs. Do you know yours? We're about to find out. How many of these books will you be familiar with already? How many of them will be brand new? Let's discover. Note, following the proper rules for alphabetizing book titles, I'm ignoring articles at the beginning of titles, such as the or an. So when we match up with the alphabet, those get ignored and the next word is what matters. All right, let's get to it. A. The one I've already read is All the Wares of Pern by Anne McCaffrey, published back in 1991. The genre is science fiction and fantasy. In this book, the people of Pern uncover advanced technology from their ancestors, which could help them finally eradicate the deadly Threadfall. This is, of course, from the Dragon Riders of Pern series by Anne McCaffrey, one of my favorite, a beautiful blend of science fiction and fantasy. This is like book 11 in the series, but it starts with an A, and it also happens to be my favorite from the Pern series. The one I haven't read yet is All Systems Red, the first book of the Murderbot Diaries by Martha Wells. This one came out in 2017 and is science fiction of a space opera variety. In this book, a self-aware security robot, who refers to itself as Murderbot, little concerning, has hacked its governor module and is torn between its duties and a desire to be left alone to watch soap operas. I can't wait to read this. They're turning it into a show on Apple TV Plus, so I've raised it up on my TBR and will read sooner rather than later. For B, the one I've read already is The Blade Itself by Joe Abercrombie, published back in 2006, the first book of the First Law trilogy. This is grimdark fantasy, where a barbarian warrior, a crippled torturer, and a self-absorbed nobleman find their fates intertwined in a world teetering on the edge of war. First Law. Incredible. The one I haven't read yet on my TBR is The Black Company by Glenn Cook. First book came out in 1984. This is dark fantasy, maybe even grimdark. A mercenary group known as the Black Company becomes embroiled in a complex web of politics and sorcery as they serve a mysterious and powerful sorceress. I look forward to getting to that. For the letter C, the book I have enjoyed already, although only kinda, but it has huge fans, is The Color of Magic by Terry Pratchett. Sir Terry Pratchett, excuse me. This was published back in 1983 and fits into the comical fantasy genre. This is the first novel in the massive Discworld series, which follows the inept wizard Rincewind as he becomes the reluctant guide to the naive tourist Twoflower, leading to a series of comedic misadventures. If you get Pratchett's comedy, you're going to love that book, and if you don't, well, all the fans say you started with the wrong book. It's the first book, but apparently that doesn't matter. The one I'm looking forward to on my TBR for C is The Caves of Steel, which is the first of Isaac Asimov's robot series. There were some short stories first, but here we get to some novels. This came out in 1954. Yeah, it's been around a while. I just haven't got to it. The genre is science fiction, leaning towards the detective noir style. In a future Earth where humans live in vast underground cities, Detective Elijah Bailey teams up with a humanoid robot to solve a murder that could threaten human robot relations. For the letter D, we're talking, of course, Dune as the one I've read. It's my favorite science fiction novel of all time by Frank Herbert, published in 1965. The genre is science fiction of an epic space opera style. What's this about? Well, it's set on the desert planet Arrakis, where young Paul Atreides becomes embroiled in a complex struggle over the planet's exclusive resource, spice, which is essential for space travel and grants psychic abilities. The one I'm looking forward to read, and I'm going to get to it here in 2025, is The Dragonbone Chair, the first book of the Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn trilogy by Tad Williams. This book came out in 1988 and is epic fantasy. The synopsis reads as a young kitchen boy, Simon, becomes involved in a world-spanning conflict between humans and ancient forces, uncovering secrets about his kingdom and himself. For the letter E, if you've watched us at all, you know what this has to be. My favorite book I've read from E is The Eye of the World by Robert Jordan, book one of The Wheel of Time. This came out in 1990, and the genre is epic fantasy. This book follows young Rand al'Thor as he discovers his pivotal role in the battle against the Dark One, embarking on a perilous journey with friends and mysterious allies. If you haven't read that, please go fix that. The one I look forward to reading, and should happen in 2025, is Empire of the Vampire. What a great name. By Jay Kristoff. It was published in 2021 and is dark fantasy. In a world where the sun... I need my movie voice. In a world where the sun has not risen for 27 years. I can't do that. Gabriel de Leon, a legendary vampire slayer, recounts his life story in the battle against the vampire empire. Lots of people have recommended this to me. I'm going to get to it soon. For F, okay, part of me wanted to go with Foundation by Isaac Asimov, but too easy. I'm giving you Flowers for Algernon by Daniel Keyes. Published in 1966, this is science fiction with a leaning towards psychological drama. In this book, Charlie Gordon, a man with an IQ of 68, that's not real high, undergoes an experimental surgery to increase his intelligence, paralleling the treatment of a lab mouse named Algernon. And this leads to profound personal and ethical dilemmas. This is one of the few books that has just about made me cry. The book I have on my TBR and look forward to getting to soon for F is Fated, book one of the Alex Verus series by Benedict Jacka. This was published in 2012 and is urban fantasy. I love the Dresden Files, and this is like the next best thing, they say. Except Benedict Jacka, who says it's the best thing. The book synopsis has Alex Verus, a London mage with the ability to see possible futures, becoming embroiled in a dangerous plot involving powerful magical factions. I'm in. For G, the great book I have to bring to you that I've read is The Gunslinger, book one of the Dark Tower series by Stephen King. This came out in 1982 and is dark epic fantasy with a heavy leaning of Western. The first book in the Dark Tower series follows Roland Deschain, the last gunslinger, as he pursues the enigmatic Man in Black, not Johnny Cash, across a desolate landscape, blending elements of fantasy, humor, and Western genres, and it's a masterpiece. The one I look forward to getting to with G also is by Stephen King, Gwendy's Button Box, co-written by Stephen King and Richard Kismer. Published in 2017, this has the genre of horror and fantasy. It's a blend. In this book, a young girl named Gwendy is given a mysterious button box with the power to change the world, but at a terrible cost. It's actually a novella, and it's the first of a trilogy. The other two books are full novels. This brings you in a little briefer. For H, I bring to you Helldivers, book one of the 12-book Helldivers series by Nicholas Sansbury Smith. This was published in 2016, and the genre is post-apocalyptic science fiction. I have other episodes just talking about Helldivers. It's so great. In a post-apocalyptic world, divers risk their lives to scavenge Earth's radioactive surface to keep humanity's last airship afloat. So if you catch that, divers, they're like diving from the sky. Skydiving, duh, it's a word. Not diving into the water. Fantastic science fiction and a bit of an adrenaline thrill ride. The H that I have on my TBR and hope to get to soon is Hyperion, the first book of the Hyperion Cantus by Dan Simmons. This book was published in 1989 and is an award winner. The genre is science fiction with a space opera leaning. In a distant future, 7 pilgrims set forth on a voyage to the distant world of Hyperion, each with a tale that holds the key to the universe's fate. Zach, my son and co-host, has already read this. He thinks it's fantastic, and I'm just behind the times. For the letter I bring you Interview with the Vampire by Anne Rice, published back in 1976. The genre is gothic, horror, and fantasy. Here we have a gothic novel that tells the story of Lewis, a 200-year-old vampire, as he recounts his life and experiences to a modern-day interviewer. Louis, depending on what time frame we're talking about. This has been made into a movie. It's been a spin-off to television. It's a great novel. The one I look forward to getting to on my TBR is In the Lives of Puppets by T.J. Klune, published in 2023, so fairly recent. The genre is science fiction fantasy blend. Here we have a unique retelling of Pinocchio, set in a world of androids and humans. Love that. It explores themes of family, identity, and humanity. For J, I bring you Jake the Dragon Talker by Eric Hahn, published just in 2023, the first book of an ongoing series. This is middle grade fantasy, but adults will find a lot to enjoy in it. In this first book, we have 12-year-old Jake, whose brain operates like a computer with strict routines and limitless learning capacity, who finds himself transported into a medieval world where superstitions and stories are real. And to return home, he has to navigate this unfamiliar realm and set things right without the aid of the modern conveniences he prefers. The one I look forward to getting to is Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell by Susanna Clarke, published in 2004. This genre is historical fantasy, and this one's fairly high on my list. Set during the Napoleonic Wars, this novel chronicles the revival of English magic through the complex relationship between two magicians, the reclusive Mr. Norrell and his ambitious pupil, Jonathan Strange. For K, the book I bring to you that I enjoyed is The Kaiju Preservation Society by John Scalzi, published in 2022. The genre is science fiction. A man joins a secret organization dedicated to preserving giant kaiju creatures in an alternate dimension while fending off human greed. Fun story. What I look forward to reading is quite a throwback. The King Beyond the Gate, which is book 2 of the Drenai saga by David Gemmell. Legend is book 1. I haven't read any of Drenai yet. This was published all the way back in 1985 and is heroic fantasy. In this book, a group of warriors unites to overthrow a tyrannical ruler, facing overwhelming odds in their quest to restore freedom to their land. The letter L brings you Leviathan Wakes by James S.A. Corey, the first book of the most excellent Expanse series. This came out in 2011 and is spectacular science fiction of a space opera variety. Being the first book in the Expanse series, we see a missing girl leading a ship's officer and a detective into a vast conspiracy that threatens humanity's survival. And it only goes up from there. The book that I woefully still haven't read In the letter L, it's on my TBR. Zach read it years ago. Is The Lies of Locke Lamora by Scott Lynch. Published in 2006, the genre is fantasy of a heist adventure style. Locke Lamora, a master con artist and leader of the Gentlemen Bastards, navigates the treacherous criminal underworld of Camorra in a tale of deception and intrigue. I'll admit, part of why this keeps getting pushed down is more books are supposed to come out in the series, and Scott Lynch has not published any in a while. So I'm not urgent yet. M, I bring to you The Martian by Andy Weir, published back in 2011. This is science fiction. This is a hard sci-fi style. In this book, astronaut Mark Watney is stranded on Mars and must use his ingenuity and knowledge to survive alone on the hostile planet. Adapted beautifully as a movie. I read the book just before the movie came out because I always like to do that first, but neither one disappoints. The M that is still on my list is a weird one. The Man in the High Castle by Philip K. Dick, which came out all the way back in 1962 and is science fiction of an alternate history style. Why it's weird is I've been watching the show on Prime Video, and I'm going to finish the show and then read the book, and I always do it the other way around, but not this time. What we have here is an alternate history novel depicting a world where the Axis powers won World War II and have partitioned control of the United States. Cool. Wait, not cool. I wouldn't want that to happen, but a great story. For N, the one I've read I will bring to you is The Name of the Wind, book 1 of the King Killer Chronicle by Patrick Rothfuss. This was published in 2007 and fits into the epic fantasy genre. What's the book about? Kavoth, a legendary figure, recounts his early years as a magically gifted young man seeking revenge for his family's murder. Dark start, dark parts throughout, and yet also just amazing. The one that I'm looking to get to on my TBR, probably not yet this year, but it's not too far down, is Neuromancer, book 1 of the Sprawl trilogy by William Gibson. This was published in 1984 and is cyberpunk science fiction. A washed-up computer hacker is hired for one last job to infiltrate a powerful artificial intelligence, navigating a cyberpunk world that pretty much defined the cyberpunk genre. And when you read these things about AI, and now we live in a world with AI, they have new perspective and meaning. All right, we're moving on to the letter O, and I bring to you The Once and Future King, the classic by T.H. White, published back in 1958. The genre is Arthurian fantasy, where we have a retelling of the Arthurian legends, focusing on King Arthur's education and reign, exploring themes of power, justice, and human nature. It's a classic. What I still need to get to and is on my TBR is Old Man's War, book 1 of the Old Man's War series by John Scalzi. This was published in 2005 and is science fiction of the military sci-fi variety. At 75, John Perry joins the Colonial Defense Forces to fight for humanity in space, discovering that his new lease on life comes with unexpected challenges. I love me some John Scalzi. For the letter P, the one I've enjoyed and offer up to you is The Poppy War, book 1 of the Poppy War trilogy by R.F. Kuang. This was published in 2018 and is dark fantasy with a real leaning to grimdark. An orphaned peasant girl named Rin aces a national test to attend a prestigious military academy where she discovers her shamanic powers amidst a backdrop of war and political intrigue. And this is about so much more. It's a heck of a book and a heck of a trilogy. What I have waiting for me on my TBR for the letter P is Perdido Street Station, book 1 of the Boz Log series by China Muleville. Published back in 2000, first of a number of books that are still ongoing in a unique genre. I don't have anything else in this category. New weird fantasy. I don't make this up. This is what's out there. In the sprawling steampunk city of New Krobazan, a scientist's experiment with a mysterious creature unleashes a nightmare that threatens the city's inhabitants. Dang, that sounds good. I could raise this higher on my TBR. For the letter Q, A book I thoroughly enjoyed many years ago is The Queen of the Damned by Anne Rice, published in 1988. This is part of her vampire series trilogy. I gave you Interview with the Vampire before. This is the finish of the series. Gothic horror, fantasy blend again. The ancient vampire Akasha awakens with a plan to dominate humanity, while Lestat and other vampires unite to stop her. Lestat is the through point through the trilogy, and oh man, this is just great stuff. The book on my TBR that I want to get to is Quarantine by Greg Egan. Published in 1992, this is science fiction. In a future where the stars have mysteriously disappeared, a detective uncovers a conspiracy involving quantum physics and a sinister experiment. We move on to the letter R, and I have to bring you something I just read last year, Red Rising by Pierce Brown, the first book in the Red Rising series. This was published in 2014 and is science fiction. In a stratified society on Mars, a low-caste miner named Darrow infiltrates the elite ruling class to initiate a rebellion against oppressive societal structures. Great series, 6 books now. The 7th and final book should be coming out here in 2025. Great time to get on this if you haven't yet. The one I haven't yet in the letter R is Red Mars by Kim Stanley Robinson, book 1 of a trilogy, although there is a later 4th book now. This one came out in 1992 and is science fiction. This first novel of the Mars trilogy chronologizes the colonization and terraforming of Mars, focusing on the political, social, and environmental challenges faced by the settlers. I think it's kind of funny that even though I didn't intentionally plan this, both my R ones are about Mars and actually have a lot of similarities. For the letter S, I bring to you my favorite Stephen King novel, The Stand. He published this in 1978 and then republished an unabridged, much longer and better version in 1990. The genre is post-apocalyptic horror. After a deadly plague wipes out most of humanity, the survivors align with either good or evil forces. Are you a good witch or a bad witch? Leading to a final confrontation. Awesome. Snow Crash is what I have waiting for me in category S. This is by Neil Stevenson, published in 1992, another cyberpunk science fiction novel. In a hyper-commercialized future America, hacker and pizza delivery driver, hero protagonist, investigates a new drug called Snow Crash that affects both the virtual and physical worlds. What a name. Hero protagonist. For T, one of my favorite standalone fantasy novels, Tigana by Guy Gavriel Kay, published in 1990. And it's just straight fantasy. A group of rebels seeks to overthrow a tyrant who has erased their homeland's very name and memory from the world in a tale of identity, memory, and cultural survival. So unique. The T1 that I have coming up on my TBR, I'm really eager to get to, A Time of Dread, book 1 of a trilogy in the same world as The Faithful and the Fallen Quartet, but starting 130 years later. This is written by John Gwynne and was published in 2018. The genre is epic fantasy. Set in the same banished lands, an uneasy truce between angels and demons threatens to unravel as ancient powers rise and new alliances form. For you, I bring to you Under the Dome by Stephen King. Published in 2009, this is a science fiction thriller. I read it just before the TV series came out by the same name. Here we have the small town of Chester's Mill, suddenly and inexplicably sealed off from the rest of the world by an invisible and impenetrable dome, leading to societal collapse and chaos as the townspeople struggle for survival. Nothing can get through the dome. It's a pretty cool book. Better than the TV show. Then, what do I look forward to reading from the letter U? I bring you Uprooted by Naomi Novik. Published back in 2015, this is a fantasy novel. I have not read any Naomi Novik yet. I have a bunch of her books on my TBR. This one, a young woman named Agnieszka, I don't know how to say it, is unexpectedly chosen by the local wizard, known as the Dragon, to be his apprentice, leading her to confront a malevolent force corrupting their land. Okay, we're up to the letter V now, and I bring you a book I totally loved, Valor by John Gwynne, from that earlier Faithful and the Fallen series that I already referenced. This is in 2014. It's book 3 of the series, and I found it to be my favorite of the set of 4 books. The genre is epic fantasy. In the Faithful and the Fallen series, Corbin and his allies face betrayal and war as they fight to fulfill a prophecy of light and darkness, and Valor plays a big role in this story arc. The one I look forward to reading is Vicious, book 1 of the Villains series by V.E. Schwab. This came out in 2013. There are a number of books in the series, and they really look interesting. The genre is fantasy. College roommates of Victor and Eli discover how to develop superhuman abilities through near-death experiences, leading to a rivalry that turns them into arch enemies. Yeah, this is going to be good. For W, I bring you one of my favorite fantasy books of all time, although it's not really fantasy. It's speculative. World War Z, an oral history of the zombie war by Max Brooks, which came out in 2006. Its technical category is hard to pin down. Horror, science fiction fantasy. It's a collection of first-person accounts detailing the global struggle against a devastating zombie outbreak. And it has so many cool themes and profound statements. It's a really good book. What I haven't got to yet and still sits on my TBR is A Wizard of Earthsea, the first of a quartet of books by Ursula K. Le Guin. This was published all the way back in 1968. It's been a staple of the fantasy genre, and I missed it. Here we have a young mage named Ged who seeks to master the art of magic while confronting his own inner darkness. For the letter X, X is not easy, people. So what I'm going to bring you that I've read is the Xanth series by Piers Anthony, starting all the way back in 1977 with A Spell for Chameleon. There's over 40 books. He's still publishing Xanth novels. This long-running series set in the magical land of Xanth, with an X, is known for its puns and imaginative creatures, and it follows various characters' adventures. It's just good fun. Now, the book I'm looking forward to on my TBR, I'm again kind of cheating. I'm bringing you X Heroes. Yeah, it doesn't start with X, but it sounds like it. This is by Peter Clines and was published in 2010. It's the first of a series. The genre is superhero/apocalyptic fiction. A group of superheroes defends humanity's last stronghold against hordes of zombies in a post-apocalyptic Los Angeles. I need to raise this higher on my TBR. That is just right in my lane. For the letter Y, I have for you one of Brandon Sanderson's secret project novels, Yumi and the Nightmare Painter. This came out in 2023 and is fantasy. It's also part of the Cosmere books. Yumi, a spirit binder, must team up with a rebellious painter to combat a growing darkness threatening their interconnected worlds. It's not one of my favorite Cosmere novels, but it definitely stands out as unique, and it's worth a read. What I have on my TBR is there because of my son Zach, because he read this trilogy and loved it. I have The Year of the Flood, which is book 2 of the Mad Adam trilogy by Margaret Atwood. This book came out in 2009. Book 1 is Oryx and Crake. This is science fiction of a dystopian style. In a world devastated by a man-made pandemic, 2 women struggle for survival while reflecting on their pasts and the eco-religious group they were once part of. Now we come to the letter Z, and what I want to share with you that I've read is such a pleasure for me, and our supporter and friend Eric Hahn will hate this one. Zombie Fallout by Mark Tufo, published in 2009, and there's now well over 20 books in the Zombie Fallout series, but this is where he got his start. It's post-apocalyptic horror and comedy. A humorous and horrifying tale of survival as Michael Talbot and his family face hordes of zombies and the collapse of civilization. This is a lighthearted zombie apocalypse story that you are not to take too seriously and just come for the cheap laughs. It's so good. The book on my TBR that I'm looking to get in Z is Zone 1 by Colson Whitehead. Unlike Zombie Fallout, this is an award winning novel. Published in 2011, it's also post apocalyptic horror in a zombie infested world. But Eric, I think you'd like this a lot better from what I see. Here we've got a survivor working to clear Manhattan of the undead as he grapples with the psychological toll of the apocalypse. So, like, deep stuff. You can do that with Zombie Apocalypse. All right, there you go. Wow, 52 books. Wham, bam, just like that for you. How many of these have you read? Which of them do you want to shout out about, talk about? Which of them you're really shocked I have read already and loved? Or which ones did I tell you I'm going to read and you think I should change my mind? Use the comment box. Interact about any of these books. I'd love to hear it. And if there's something you would have totally said, no, 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 this is one of the best in science fiction and horror in a particular letter, and I missed it, maybe I don't know about it yet. Tell me. I'd love to hear your Y, X, or Z books, whatever you got. Thanks for watching, everybody. Check out the show notes for other ways you can interact with Zach and I. We'd love to hear from you. We'll talk to you next time.